Hi, everybody, it's Amy here, and I'm very excited to be sitting in front of you talking about today's book, The Science of Positivity by Loretta Breuning. I'm not too sure how to say her surname. This book is great. I think it's different in the sense that it's very much backed by science. The author actually works at the Mammal Institute, so everything that she looks at and speaks about is very much from a scientific perspective. And the premise of the book is that we have been evolved to look out for negativity because that kept us safe. So, being able to spot danger in the environment or spot what could go wrong really helped us to evolve and to live for longer, because if we could spot danger, we could prepare for it better. And our lives have changed, and our brains haven't yet evolved with the times and the level of comfort that we actually have around us. So we have that ability to look out for all that negativity and all that danger, and not as much negativity and danger as we used to, or not as much that's actually life threatening. And so basically, this isn't something to feel bad about or necessarily means that, oh, we're just bred and born for negativity, so we're just going to be stuck there. It's more that in being aware of this, we can learn how to rewire those patterns a little bit better. In the same way that we actually seek out comfort. If we really chose to do something we actually wanted to do, we'd lie down all day on the couch because that's what we evolutionarily want to do. However, we kind of train ourselves to do more, to maybe exercise, to walk around, to be up, to be mobile, to do work, to do whatever you do during the day. So this is similar to that, at least in my mind. A lot of what is spoken about in this book can be remembered through the PARE acronym. That's PARE, and it stands for Personal Agency and Realistic Expectations. And we'll look at the two halves. So the first part is personal agency. This is the belief that you can meet your own needs through your own actions. The next part is realistic expectations. And this is the understanding that rewards are unpredictable, and also often the rewards that we expect to get, at least in our head, our mind's picture of that reward is a lot better usually than what it actually is in reality. And it's not necessarily that can come across as a survival threat to us, but the frustration that rewards are unpredictable and the frustration that our reality might not be as good as our expectations, that is a survival threat. Whereas having realistic expectations of things helps you to feel more regulated. So the author says when you PARE, you reap, because when you have realistic expectations, you act personally. In other words, when you have a realistic view of what could happen, you have more agency and independence in making it happen for you, or at least trying to do whatever you can that's within your control, rather than waiting for others to do it for you. So I think that's quite good. I think it's useful to think about this in the sense that how many times have you felt quite disappointed, upset, angry by what you thought would happen, and then what actually happened? And then also, how often have you been upset, angry, disappointed by not doing something you wanted to, or maybe wanted to ask for, but you didn't, and you expected somebody else to? I really like the PARE and REAP acronym because I think a lot of our unhappiness and disappointment often does come from expecting things to happen for us, or expecting others to do things for us, expecting others to make us happy, expecting others to make us successful. And the minute we try to take that into our own hands, we feel a lot more fulfilled. And the same thing can be said for having realistic expectations. I think when you put a lot of pressure on something to look a certain way, it almost always doesn't feel that good. Or if you put a lot of pressure on things to be a certain way and it hasn't happened yet, when it does happen, it often doesn't feel good. And I urge you to test this out for yourself. The next time you have some sort of event, whether or not it's a party or a dinner or something like that, that's a bit more special than the usual occasion, try go into that without any expectations whatsoever and see how you enjoy your time. Because I think often what you expect from something either leads to some kind of anxiety because you're trying to think about what's going to happen, how can I prepare for it, or you maybe build up this thing that's so great in your imagination, and the actual event might be great, but because you've built it up in your own imagination, nothing will ever compare to that. So you do end up not enjoying it as much as you would if you walked in there with no expectations. And one of the first things the author puts forward too is you will not find or see the good if you're looking for the bad. And I really like this because it's realistic in the sense that if you are always thinking about the worst that could happen or how you could be disappointed in this scenario or what you have to lose, you will likely see all of those things. I think people might think that those who look for the positive, they're just born with that. But actually, it takes a lot of effort, at least in the beginning, to try and look for the positive and to wire your brain that way. After a lot of practice, you do get used to it and you find you look for the good very naturally. But in the beginning, at least, you have to push past that instinct to look for the bad and actually look for the good. And if you don't do that, you will see the bad. But if you put in that initial effort and work a little bit harder to see the good, you'll find it. Another interesting aspect of our tendency towards negativity is that we feel good when we predict something and that comes true. So if we say, oh, I know I'm going to have a bad day, we might unintentionally try to make that happen because it feels good that we predicted that today would be bad and then it was bad, and we can say, ha, I knew I was right. Maybe you recognize it in yourself, but also in others, that people do this. They're like, I know this relationship's going to turn out badly, or I know I'm not going to like this movie, or something like that. And almost always that does end up happening because we like the way it feels when we think something's going to happen, and that does happen. So again, the author throughout is trying to say that might be what our brains are sort of wired for, but being aware of this now helps you kind of prevent that from happening. So notice in yourself, if you notice yourself doing that where you assume something's going to be bad, try and stop yourself in your tracks. And it's not that you have to be unrealistic and say, oh, today's going to be the best day ever, or this is going to be the best movie I ever watched. But maybe just don't assign a label to an experience. If you're not feeling good on the day or for something, and you feel as if you're going to say, I know today is going to be bad, or I know this is going to be bad, doesn't mean you have to be completely positive about it and feel like this isn't even you. Just don't assign a label to it. Just let it be what it is. If you're not feeling yourself, you're not feeling 100%, you can say, this is just going to be what it is. I'm going to have a day. And just let it be that. Try not to assign anything to it, because you will try, or at least your brain will try to make that be true. An important aspect of the ways that our brains work is not to judge yourself for what might feel instinctual. So already some of the things that I've mentioned, it's our gut reaction to act that way and to make, for example, negative things come true if we predicted that something negative was going to happen. Don't have judgment for yourself, because the moment you judge yourself, it's almost like you grasp onto that thing, and it's a lot harder to move away from it and to move through it. So the minute you just accept something as it is, it's a lot easier to let it go. It might sound counterintuitive, but it is true. And some other ways that our brains sometimes work against us that you can look out for, and remember you're looking out for it, not to judge yourself, just to be aware of it. The first one, and I'm sure you know of it, is following the herd. But this is actually something that we evolved to do. So it's not something to make yourself feel bad about, but if you notice that you want to follow the herd or just do something because everybody else is doing it, have a pause and a moment to reflect and ask yourself, is this actually what I want to do? Or am I doing it just because other people are doing it? We are very community based. We like people, we like having relationships. And so sometimes we put that above what may actually be good for us. What is another innately human thing that we do is wanting attention from others and being upset when we don't get that attention. And I'm sure as you're listening, you very much relate to that. Sometimes we expect attention, especially from somebody we're close to, and we can feel the sense of frustration if we don't get attention or the type of attention we need. Again, it's not something to judge yourself for. Just be aware of it, take a moment, pause and reflect. And especially in this case of maybe being frustrated or upset that you're not getting the attention you feel you need, do what you need to do to help yourself regulate. So if there is a person who you're wanting attention from and you're not getting it, see what you can do for yourself in this moment to make yourself feel safe. I mentioned the PAIR acronym earlier, and I think a vital part of this is personal agency. And I want to discuss this a little bit further because personal agency really starts with having a good understanding of your needs. Following this book means that you become somewhat of an expert in the things that you need. And this doesn't mean that you become selfish. It just means that you become really good at looking after yourself so that you're better able to do and give and help and whatever it is that you do once you know your cup is refilled. So if you are very good at meeting your own needs, you're a better partner, you're a better friend, you're a better dad, mom, sister, brother. Spend some time thinking about what you need, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly. Look at it, small, day to day, week to week, and month to month, and be very good at being aware of what you need and try and meet those needs to the best of your ability. I often find with the people that I coach that, especially if they're older and they maybe have children or they have jobs and teams and people under them, their needs are often very close to the bottom of the list. And that does lead to burnout or that does lead to stress. And so it's a very good idea just to be an expert at what you need to feel like you've got enough energy, to feel recharged, and to feel like your cup is full. So whether or not that's making sure you get outside to walk if that's something that's important to you, or to exercise every day, or to make sure you have breakfast every day, to make sure that you get up and stretch every so often, whatever it is, little like that or big, like you every month you need a day off to go away, maybe leave your city, something like that. Just look at it, spend some time considering it because it is worth it. And a good way of thinking about this is you can't keep driving and not refill your car with petrol or fuel because that's the thing that helps the car drive. So this is very much the same thing. An important part of this too is if you become very good at knowing what your own needs are, also know that you have the ability to meet them. It's a really amazing and empowering thing if you not only know what you need, but you know that you can meet your own needs. Depending on your situation, expecting a friend, a partner, or something like that to actually meet your own needs all the time is really hard. I understand there's certain needs that you have that partners fulfill, like keeping you company and things like that. However, most of your needs can and should be met by you. And there's a really good sense of empowerment that comes from being able to do that. And a lot of disappointment and cynicism builds up, even resentment, if you expect others to do that for you. I know a lot of what I've spoken about so far goes along the lines of what our brains naturally do, which is often negative. And here are some things to counteract that. Just because we often look out for the negative things doesn't mean that's the way we have to stay. The author says that you can change the way you see things by choosing what to focus on. And a simple way of doing this is simply looking for the good. And I know this sounds very broad and you might be like, what? Or it's even cliche because you've probably heard it a lot of times. But to bring it back to reality, try every day for 3 to 6 weeks to look for something good at least 3 times a day. And the author makes it easier by saying choose breakfast, lunch, and dinner as reminders to look for your 3 good things. So, whilst you're eating breakfast, think of things that are good around you, whatever it is, and then the same with lunch and the same with dinner. And at least after 6 weeks, you will probably notice a change because you're focusing on the things around you that are good. And over time, when you make that a habit, you start to see those things a lot easier. You don't have to look as much, they are just there, and you just notice them a lot more. Similar to this, and I know it's been mentioned so much, is gratitude. Being able to be grateful and actually have a gratitude practice, whether or not it's 3 times a day, or maybe at the end of the day you think of 3 things you're grateful for, it puts you in the role of passive receiver. Gratitude is so important because it's a state of feeling happy for something you've already got or already experienced. So it's so counter the way a lot of people are and think is, I want this. I wish my life was like this. It's like, I'm grateful I have this. I'm grateful that happened to me. The habit of negativity can be very difficult to shake. Yes, our minds have definitely gotten used to negative ways of thinking. If you haven't really practiced some of these positive behaviors before, then it can be very hard to rewire your brain, but it is very much worth it. It's worth the initial effort to get through these bad habits and replace them with more positive or at least fulfilling habits and ways of thinking. The urge to focus on threats really doesn't serve you. It might feel like it does for a moment, but it really doesn't. And once you try to get rid of these negative habits, you can't just leave it with nothing. You have to replace your habits with something else. And so replace it with these more positive ones that I've mentioned. And the author says something about animals and the way that they work in relation to the threats they are aware of, which I think we can really learn from. A mountain goat thrives because it focuses on its footing, not the ominousness of the mountain. A monkey thrives by focusing on the next branch instead of looking down. A gazelle thrives by focusing on individual lions rather than catastrophizing about lions in general. You can thrive by focusing on the path in front of you. You get to choose that path. And I feel like that's so beautifully written. I didn't want to mess up any of that wording because it's so great. You know, we can really take a lot of lessons from the animals around us, just like the author has mentioned here, that there are threats around us, but we don't have to make that our sole focus of our everyday. You get to choose your path, you get to choose where you focus. So, why not invest a little bit of extra time and energy into making that a more enjoyable experience than one that you don't enjoy? I also really like that analogy with the animals because it encourages you just to focus on your next step, right? So, the goat doesn't look at the whole mountain, it looks at the footing right in front of it. The monkey doesn't look at all the distance between itself and the ground, it just looks at the next branch. And so you can really apply that to your situation, whatever it is. Don't look at everything in front of you and all the possible things. Just think about what is the next best step I could take and try and take that to the best of your ability. And once you get there, you can figure out the next one. And before you know it, you've made a lot of progress. It is true that we have a negativity bias and the world has a negativity bias because the things that are negative just gets more attention. If a restaurant serves one bad meal, that's probably going to get a lot more attention than the hundreds of meals that have been served super well. We don't always take the time to appreciate all the good things that are happening because we're often looking for the defects. And this is what the author calls the zero defect strategy. And I'm sure if you do that practice with noticing three good things that happen in your day, you will start to notice the difference. All in all, I feel like this author is trying to say there's a lot more positivity in the world than we think. It does often come down to our perspective. And by knowing that we are often wired for negativity, or by knowing that our brains are wired for negativity, this is not to lock you up or feel like this is a bad thing and you can't escape. It's rather to actually set you free. In being aware of this, you're able to counteract it. It's really hard to counteract something you're not aware of. I really enjoyed this book. I think it's quite a different read. A lot of the self development books that you read don't always mention a whole lot of science. I think there's a move there because people appreciate that, and I think there's a blending of self development and science. But I do think that this was a different read I'd had in a long time, and I appreciate it. I think it's nice to have a new perspective or a new way of sharing some ideas, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Let me know what stood out to you most from this book and what you might use going forward. I like that there's definitely some science behind a lot of what the author mentions and some practical ways to get out of negative thinking habits. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.